What's up YouTube, and welcome to another Procreate tutorial where today we're going to create this curly sunset tree design. Now of course there's links to everything you're going to need over on my Patreon. The requirements are completely free. You can grab the palette and that's everything you're going to need for today's design. Everything else is built into Procreate. So go ahead and grab that over on Patreon, where you'll also find the canvas size and how many layers are required for today's design as well. Make sure to of course subscribe for weekly tutorials here on my YouTube channel, but if you want to get access to even more tutorials from me, you can come and join me over on Patreon, where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters, and the catalogue's well over 100 at the time of recording. So if you want to get access to that, check it out using again the link in the description down below. Enjoy today's tutorial and let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, the first thing we'll go ahead and do is go up to our actions. We'll go to our drawing guide and let's edit that drawing guide, and we'll set it to whatever is a quarter of your canvas size. So 500 will work if you've used the same color as me or size as me. And then we'll set a color up here. Just drag this little dot here to wherever you feel is necessary. I think something like a bright pink will be good so that we can see it against the rest of the design. So we'll hit done. And now with that set, we can go ahead and go to our colors. We're going to grab the color in the top left of the palette. Let's go to our brush. Let's go to the monoline brush. So for you and me, it's under calligraphy. And we're going to use the monoline. Brush size doesn't matter, just as long as you draw in a circle. Hold your pen at the end and pop a finger on the screen to make sure it's a nice perfect circle. Don't go over the edges, make sure it's inside the actual canvas. Then grab your cursor. Make sure snapping is turned on in the bottom left, and then drag this up into the center until you get orange lines like so that let you know you're nice and central in the middle of your design. At that point you can maybe make it a smidge smaller and position it like so. My final size there for you is 1769 by 1769. And then tap on your cursor, drag your color to the outside edge, and now you've got your nice border. We're then going to go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath. And while we're here, let's also go ahead and set our background color to the color in the bottom left of the palette. It's only a temporary color really. And we'll hit done. Now on this empty layer, I'm going to switch my brush now to the one that we're going to utilize, which is actually going to be under, it's going to be under inking, and we're going to use the studio pen. Now if I tap on the studio pen, you'll be able to see my stabilization settings here. So you can see later on we'll be able to get some nice super smooth lines, and it will get rid of a lot of the jitters for us. But this brush has a wonderful taper on it, so you can start off really light, press really firm, and then get really nice and thin, so you can let your branches get nice and small. So we'll hit done, and then using this brush we're going to have a size set to 19%. This will allow us to vary our size quite a bit. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start roughly here, so this point in the middle at the bottom of our grid. We're just going to go ahead and draw in a bumpy, uneven, rocky kind of almost surface, just a ground almost. So let's go ahead and just maybe round off a little bit of that there. I might actually want to make this a little bit wider as well, so we'll just create like a bit of a base for our tree, so a little flat top on there too. And let's go ahead and bring that out here, and then maybe there's like a bump of some sort. In fact, let's smooth that one out. Let's go ahead and come down here and then create like a bit of a point over there, just a little something of detail, and then go all the way around the bottom here and link up to the starting point so you can drag and drop your color in. This is going to be your mound for your tree, so you can go ahead and adjust it, you can make tweaks to it. The one thing I do urge you to try and do, if you want to fill up your land into the border, that way you get a really nice smooth sort of curve that makes its way up. Now we're going to go ahead and draw in our tree. So we're going to create a separate layer, and on this layer we're going to create the main sort of body for it. Now this entire sort of tree, as you'll be able to see from the final result, has this like S-like kind of structure to it, okay? Like it's constantly creating S's. So the first thing we want to do is lay out our main trunk, and then we can branch off everything else from there. So I'm going to start around about here. I'm going to create like a bit of an S shape that comes down and into our mound. So starting roughly here, I'm going to come around on myself, keep it nice and thin to start with, and then allow that to come down and into your kind of stump down here. We're going to somewhat lose where the tree is and where the stump or the ground is, and we want that on purpose. So once we've got that line in play, we can then go ahead and say, well, from there we'll branch one out here, we'll branch one out over here. So let's go ahead and thicken this up to start with. So we're going to come down here, a lot more pressure, and also obviously make it a little bit wider and then color it in. And again, this is where your tree and the ground kind of merge together. And we want that to be a lot bigger than that. So we're going to create some interesting shapes here. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. And let's go ahead and draw in the rest of the tree now over on the right side. And this main center area will come to life. So I'm going to start over here really hard with the pressure and then just S shapes and allow that to come up and over towards there. Then from there, we'll go ahead and create another one that's going to start in this kind of middle area here in a similar fashion. And let's maybe just snake that all the way up really, really small with your pressure as it makes its way up towards the end. And then from here, we now have our main trunk. So I can now go ahead and just flush that in a tiny bit more and maybe create some interesting bumps and lumps down its sort of body. Let's maybe go ahead and sort of create another small S shape here. And let's maybe go ahead and create a little one in there too. And they're all going to look like this, these really fun little S shapes. And then just make sure that the start of those branches are nice and thick, and you can just run your pen over. Sometimes you might have to do it once or twice just to thicken up the line as it makes its way back in towards that center point. And then from there, we want to just branch off over and over again. So we're just going to create some little S shapes there. And now from here, we just have to keep creating branches and filler. So let's go ahead and sort of round that up. And from there, we'll end up with another one coming off of here too. Let's create another one in there. You want to avoid your other sort of branches, so try not to make it too sort of clustered together. Let's maybe make another one over here, nice and small. Lovely. I don't want to go too wide, but I can always go ahead and reduce the width of the tree by making it a little bit smaller in a moment. So I'll just bring that one in. Let's see if we can then also create another one out here too. That one's quite straight, but I like that. It's a little bit of a difference between these two. And then from there, it's now a matter of sort of picking certain areas of these sort of bends and seeing if we can naturally just run our pen into those spaces and create all these little S shapes. They can have lovely little curls on the end. You can branch them out from sort of a main point like this and let them go in different directions. They don't all have to go upwards and all the way to the end of the branches. You can create tiny little ones off of the end there. So have some fun really flushing out all your branches and try and keep them in like little clusters. That's one little cluster. Down here, we could definitely go ahead and maybe create one like this into there, and then another one that sort of curls out from there, and another one. But that's almost in its own little cluster down here. So we don't need to kind of worry about them sort of getting too bunched up. Here at the top, we'll do the same. So I'm going to come back on myself here a little bit and then create some awesome twirly, curly branches. So this is quite a fun sort of style for a tree. You know, you don't always have to do them perfect every single time like a regular tree. And in your gaps, if you feel like you're not going to be able to fit a branch, just whack a little sort of curly line in there, like here too. Let's create like a little bit of a curl in there as well. As long as it nicely rounds off from the tree body, you know, like a little something like that, you'll end up with this really fun aesthetic to your tree. Let's go ahead and definitely try and fill out some area over here too. We want that tree to be nice and full at the same time. And you can see sometimes I don't like the weight of the branches, so I'll end up redoing them just because I want them to have, you know, a seamless flow from the width of the brush. So I want the brush to be obviously heavy in here, but as it makes its way up and out in towards these outer edges, I want them to just naturally just run out where you can't tell necessarily that I've introduced a new line there. Just the line runs so smooth. Lovely. And that is pretty much bang on the full aesthetic of what we're trying to go for. It's then up to you. Do you want to introduce new smaller little curls in certain areas? On the ends, you can be really, really sort of detailed. And if you want to, you can introduce lots and lots of curls. And they don't even need to be curls. They could be like that, where it's just like little flick ups. Just like on the ends of the branches, there would be the most sort of shoots, because obviously it just continues to split and branch off. So on the very edges, you're more than welcome to just spend some time adding in some nice curls. And you can send some in different directions. You can reintroduce them if you like, or even at this point, start to refine it in a sense where you actually get rid of a few lines that maybe you don't like the look of. I'm going to try my best in here. There we go. That one nicely fits. I can see it's got a full sort of general shape to it and a bit of a flat top on it. So maybe over here on the left hand side, I'll just try and make this area here just the tiniest little bit higher. Therefore, we've got some nice variety in the shape of the tree. It's not too round and generalized. So from there, that looks pretty good. The other thing that you can then introduce is some roots in here. So you can go ahead and sort of run your pen like this, like so they're like roots that have exposed themselves up and out of the tree, and then just add in some cool details really. Run one there, and then maybe that splits off a couple of times even at the bottom here, just to create some interesting aesthetic to it. I think it looks really fun, nice and playful. Now at this point you can go ahead and grab your cursor. You can uniform this down as well. It may mess up some of your lines at the bottom there, so you may just have to sort of retouch them up a little bit. But we're not trying to sort of make this too high. Where I've got mine sort of sat there is pretty much bang on. We've got obviously the foliage to add on there as well. So let's tap on our cursor when we're done. That looks really cool. I'm going to go ahead and crack on with that. So from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new layer. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to go to the option of charcoals, and we're going to use the burnt tree brush. The size is set to 4%. And then with this brush, we can zoom in and we can add in some foliage on here. Press quite firm and just wiggle your pen around to create all these sort of leaves. Now, I don't want you to sort of group them together too heavily. So, you know, on this branch here, we'll add some color. Over here on this sort of cluster, you want to look for your clusters of your branches that you created previously. You can add in some on there, leave maybe a gap. I can see I've got a big main cluster over here, so I'm going to introduce some on the top of up here. And I'm trying to get a little bit lighter towards my smaller areas underneath, and maybe I'll link them together a tiny bit. But lots of small clusters will look really great, and try to sort of, I would urge you to lean on the side of less is more with this. So try to add in like a little bit and then just see what it looks like by zooming out in a moment and seeing what it sort of the general impression of your tree, and try to layer them. Try to just add the sort of foliage on the very top, maybe just add a little bit in certain areas. This one here in the center, I can definitely go ahead and introduce a little bit here, like in these, not so much like the center area, but like we're getting close to it, you know, it's just inside the body of the tree a little bit. You can introduce some like here. So let's go ahead and see if we can add in a little bit more on the edges, just to sort of make them a bit chunkier. And you may want to redo this a couple of times. I probably will come back to it at a later point just to try and make some adjustments. So far, that looks really cool and I'm happy with how it looks. So I'll just flush this one out a little bit more. I'll maybe make this one a little bit bigger as well. And that's given me some really fun coverage. I'm using this one here at the top to break up the shape in general. And I think that looks really good. So we're going to go ahead and leave it as that is. Now at this point, we can add in our little hills that are going to sit down here. So let's go back to our brush. Let's go back into the option of inking, and we're going to change it to, again, the studio pen. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, bottom right of the palette. We need to go to our layers. We need to create a new layer and drag it underneath all of our layers so far. So just in front of our background color. And then over here on the right hand side, we're going to go ahead and just create our first little hillside. Add some little areas of tremor in there just to add in some interesting kind of hillside, and then go all the way around and loop up to the beginning so that you can drag and drop your color in like so. From there, go to your layers, create a new layer, drag it underneath, go to your colors, grab the next color, which is this one here, the second from right column, and then we'll create another set of hills. And then these ones here, again, they can have some nice jitters in them, but you can let them run in behind the previous color. You can let them get a little bit higher. You'll end up adding in some really interesting levels of depth. Now just run back through just like here. So as I've run back through, I've gone through basically the tips there. If I turn that layer off, you see it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. That's quite important. So drag and drop your color in and then turn on the one in front of it again. Then go to your layers, create a new layer, drag it underneath. Go to your colors, grab the bottom of the third column. We'll introduce another wave of hills, and we're going up to this line here, basically, of our drawing assist there. So you can put one now in the middle, but again, try to introduce some very simple tremors in there because it's like hills in the distance, you don't want to make them too large and, you know, detailed like the ones at the front. Again, it's really important you go from your end point, go all the way around but through the color of the last one so it's not too low down, and then drag the color into there. And then go to your layers once more, create another new layer and drag it underneath. Go to your colors, grab this color here, bottom of the fourth column from the right, and again we'll introduce our final set of hills, but these ones want to kind of be fairly, there's not too many jitters in there, fairly smooth, and then just go through and maybe just color in the gaps like so. Now at this point I really urge you to mess around with your layers. You know, maybe grab a layer, move it up a tiny bit if you want to maybe sort of stack them a little bit more. Ultimately, of course, the ones at the front should be the biggest, i.e. these ones, and then the ones in the distance can start to get a little bit thinner and compressed. So I just moved my second one up there just a little bit, just to give my sort of front hills here a little bit more definition. You can always go back to the first color, for example, and then go to that layer, and then maybe sort of make one hill or peak a little bit higher by sort of definition and making sure that it is, just so that again it pushes everything further back in the distance. So I'm just going to sort of cover in the edges there, adding in some interesting hills. Now at this point what I want you to do is swipe from left to right on all four of those and group them together, and let's call this hills. So I called it hills. Let's add in some glows from the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to the far color, so the bottom layer, tap on it, we'll add a mask to it, making sure you're on the mask, color set to black. Your brush wants to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush. Let's make that brush size nice and small, probably around about, probably smaller than that. Let's go down to about a 4% brush size. And we're looking at this light green in the distance. We're going to go through the bottom area of it really lightly and just introduce a bit of a glow. You don't want to get rid of the top. So for example, you don't want to run your brush up like that. You don't want to get rid of that. You just want to introduce a bit of a glow in behind here. And then again, the opposite side as well. So just run your pen in there. You can wiggle it up and down. It doesn't need to be a straight line. And then just repeat. Go to the next layer, tap on it, add a mask. You should be on the mask by default. And then just run your pen along the bottom area of your hills. Just like so. If it doesn't show on all of them, that's perfectly fine. Then go to the next hill, add a mask to it, and repeat. So this one's right in front of us. So let's make the brush size about 6% now. And just run some glow in there as well. I say glow, it's more like a mist, isn't it? And then the ones at the very front, we'll go to that layer, tap on it, add a mask. And do the same. We'll just introduce a bit of a misty glow down here. And I'll just re-add this one over here as well, wiggle in my pen in that space. Awesome. Now we've got our hills in play, we can then go ahead and move on to the sky. At this point, you're more than welcome to tap on your hills and you can flatten them to change it into one layer. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer though. Drag it underneath your hills, and this is going to be a sky. And we're then going to go ahead and go to our actions. We're going to edit our drawing guide. We're going to go to the option of 2D grid, and we're going to change the size to 113 and hit done. Now at this point we can hit done. We're going to take a look at our grid. Now, if you take a look at our colors, we've got 12 colors here, that top row up to here, plus these 4, and that's our colors for our sky. You want to find the column where you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I know it's this column here. So it's this one here. You can put a marker on it if you need to, but as long as you remember where it is. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to your colors and grab the color in the top right, drag it onto the screen. Again, remember where your column is. Then go to your next color, which is this blue here. So it's the second. We're just going to make our way along and then curl back around on ourselves. We're going to go to our selection tool. It's really important that you select rectangle and color fill is turned on. You want to find the row. Now I can go ahead and go to my drawing guide, for example. I'll just change it to white so that you can see a little bit more on my screen. Again, I've found my column. So we know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I know it's all the way there. So if that's where number 1 is, this is where number 2 is. So using that row, I can just go ahead and make sure I'm using my selection tool. Color fill turned on. I can just color in that row like so. And it doesn't matter if you go a little bit further down. I urge you to kind of do that. Then tap on your selection tool, tap on it again so we can start the next color, and then go to your colors and pick the next one, which is this one here, third color from the right. We go in again, we pick the row that we need. Again, I urge you to just overlap it a tiny bit on the bottom. and then tap on your selection tool, tap on it again, go to your next color. Go back, we can then go ahead and fill in that row. Again, overhang it at the bottom, so it's going to be all the way down. Tap on your selection tool, then tap on it again, change your color, go back to the next one. So a bit of a repeating process here, but we do it all together. Tap on your selection tool, tap on it again, change your color. Next one. We just draw that in like so. Here you go. Selection tool, color, next one. Here you go. Now what this is going to do is this is going to give us all the colors we need for our beautiful big sky gradient. And then we can go ahead and merge them all together shortly. Tap on my selection tool, tap on it again, go to my color. What's the next one? It's this one. Let's go across here, edge to edge every time. Tap on your selection tool, tap on it again, next color. This one here, and do the next color. Now there are multiple ways to always do the same thing in Procreate, so if you knew of a better way, it is what it is. There's loads of different ways of doing the same thing. We'll grab our next color, our penultimate one for here. We draw in this row here, tap on our selection tool, then go back to our selection tool for the final time, go to your color and grab this one here. And then this time the difference is you want to make a selection. One, you want to make sure there's no gap in between, so you don't want any blue showing. And you want to go all the way to the bottom and then tap on your selection tool when you're done. So for me, I had a tiny gap there. So I'm just going to go ahead and redo that all the way to the bottom and tap on my selection tool when I'm done. Look how cool that gradient is. Now, what we can then go ahead and do is we can blur this together. So we can go to our adjustments. We can go to Gaussian blur. We can swipe from left to right, and you want to go up to something around about sort of 30% will give you a beautiful gradient in the sky. So I'm going to go between 30 and 39. Let's go to 34 and tap on our adjustments when we're done. Let's then tap on our cursor. Let's rotate this until we move the dark tones up into the top right. They can be a little bit sort of towards the top area, but you want to leave the sort of brighter tones for the very bottom left corner where the sun is setting. So you may want to scale this up or down potentially, but to me that looks pretty good in terms of color. We've got a good variety of all the tones that we need. So I'm going to tap on my cursor when we're done. Now at this point, we need to then go to our actions. We need to edit our drawing guide again. We're going to go to perspective. We're going to move our canvas over to the right because we're going to tap and we're going to add a perspective over here. The sun is setting somewhere over here. And this is where you can also define your horizon line as well. So here is your horizon line, which is where that land stops. So all your light rays now are pointing up here, as you can see from the perspective grid. Now hit done and you've got that on your screen. Now it's really somewhat optional if you want to use it. I'll show you how you can use it. So let's go to this gradient. Let's tap on it and add the drawing assist to it. So it's going to utilize that perspective. We're then going to grab our smudge tool. We're going to tap on the smudge tool. We're going to go to calligraphy and the blotchy brush. The blotchy brush wants to be, first of all, set to about 100%. Now I've got three different sizes. We've got 100, we've got 42 and we've got 12. Those sizes will go from top to bottom here. So 12 will be at the sort of far distance, the horizontal sort of area there. Then the next size, 42, will be in the mid area of the sky. And the largest size of 100 will be right at the top. Now, what you can do is you can smudge colors across. So if we start up here and we smudge down, it's going to bring that dark blue color down over the top of the next blue and then down into the purples and pinks. So if you tap with some hard pressure and then get really thin, you can create what essentially looks like a bit of a cloud. So you can go right at the top, press really firm, and then allow that to just get nice and thin. And it's utilizing the grid. So I can't do any angle now that doesn't match up to that grid. I have to follow suit. Vice versa as well. You can push your purples then up and over the top of your clouds, introducing some shades of pink and purple that make their way up and into the dark tones. We're looking to create a really beautiful, dramatic, painting-like sort of sky. So it's up to you what you want to do and where you want to smudge. Everybody's will look different, but I urge you to smudge in some dark tone. Try not to sort of have them sort of too much like a line after line after line. But as you go, push some color back up and over the top of them, break down those clouds, introduce some brighter tone. And it's not just red over here. You know, you can push the orange here over the top of the red and the pinks. It's every color from left to right that we can overlap on top of each other. And if you create a streak that goes all the way from here to the yellow, you're going to push yellow almost as far as it can go, and then you're just going to create a lovely long streak. Now, we're looking to somewhat create like a very streaky sky. So I do urge you to sort of start at the very top with this largest brush size and push some color around, have fun, moving it all around. But you don't have to use the drawing guide. You can tap on it and turn off the drawing assist. Just use it as a visual guide as to where to put the color. And now you're free to just press as firm as you want and also create clouds by somewhat wiggling your pen up and down. Wiggling it up on the left side of your cloud will just allow you to create some really lovely fluffy clouds. Here where I've got some straight lines, I can wiggle my pen along that now and smudge in some color to create the rounded shapes that you would expect from a cloud. So now we can have some sort of actual refinement process in here and create some really, really interesting aesthetics. Now, one thing I also urge you to do is, especially even up here in the largest sizes, go down to like a 12% and just have some fun pushing a streak or two across the sky. Really push some color across. You may not see too much of a result here and there, but occasionally you may get something that you can just drag enough across. Maybe you need to go to the 42% to see any visual change, but you can push a color like all the way as far as it can go. Like, there we go, like a little bit of purple all the way across over the top. Just have some fun. That's what it's all about. So I'm going to go ahead and wiggle my pen. Now I've got the 42 brush size now. Over here in this kind of area as well, we kind of want to sort of focus a smaller set of clouds. These ones are the largest at the very, very top, and in this middle area is where we want to use the 42%. So let's bring in some darkness where we can. And also don't forget, there is dark tones all the way out here. If I go to as far as I can over there and then bring it in, I can bring in a really lovely big dark streak. Comes in right from the edge, a lovely big dark cloud. And then again, I can run across it more on the underside, if anything, so that we can introduce some nice, colourful, underlit areas of cloud. One thing when I pre-practiced this is I kept getting lots of layers, like a line, a line, a line, a line. You want to kind of break that up a little bit where possible. So like bring in some lighter tones, even just leave, gaps in your sky. So you've got just like a little dash here and there. Now you may want to turn off your tree as well, just so you can see your full sky. Now this process does take a little bit of time, but I urge you to enjoy the process and create some really interesting, beautiful scenery. Follow your guides, vary up your pressure. That will look fantastic. Varying up your pressure and wiggling in some up and down jitters in there will look fantastic. You'll be able to create those amazing cloud-like aesthetics. Let's go ahead and wiggle our pen backwards and forwards occasionally. So I bring through a little bit of the red. You can just see the tiniest little bit of red that's just been dragged through from up here to here. And I've swapped it almost for orange by just going backwards and forwards a few times. I really want this to have some lots and lots of color. So we're going to really try and streak all over the place here. We'll keep our clothes on, but as in we'll streak the paint across here. We'll go ahead and just wiggle our pen along here. Sometimes I hear myself speak and I go, hang on, wait, what? We're streaking now, are we? But you know what I mean. We're going to bring some purple in from the top up here. Wiggle that down. I'm going to bring in some dark as well from the very, very top edge. Maybe I'll even try and sort of press quite firm. Now, what you're bringing in from the very top in terms of the darkness is ultimately our night sky as well. So up here, we'll be able to reveal some planets, etc. In the latter part of the sky area. So and part of the tutorial. So what you introduce here is kind of you're revealing this space where we can show our stars. Now everything's going to get a little bit more horizontal. We're slowly going to end up having to think about reducing our brush size as well. You can bring in the brightest tones over here from the yellow all the way across. And again, I'm using the guide of my perspective that we added onto the screen to just give myself something to aim towards. Wiggling that color across the screen. Look at that. Look at how all these colors just blend across. I'm going to be honest though, this is very much an artistic sort of liberty and sort of interpretation. And these are clouds, so they'd ultimately sort of block light, but we just want to create a really beautiful sunset sky. Sometimes you don't need to make things too accurate all the time. You can just have a really pretty, sunset sky that you don't need to sort of think about too much. You just introduce all the colors and make something that's visually very pleasing. That's all that matters. So as I start to get a little bit lower now, I'm gonna switch my brush out to the 12% down here. Now you're gonna struggle a little bit here because if you look from here to here, there's not much spectrum of color. So you're gonna have to wiggle your pen up and down and try and just introduce the odd little bit here and there. But that's a good thing because first of all, these clouds are much, much further away, these areas of color across our sky. So you may now want to sort of think about just creating long, dragged out lines. You know, I can drag some of that light tone all the way across the sky here and just you're compressing them. Up here we've got big clouds because they're on top of us. If you looked up at the sky, you'd see clouds right above you and you can see the underside of them. But clouds in the distance, you can just see this compression happening of all the clouds in the distance. Now, it's not to say you can't grab the 42% here and introduce some in there, you know, big gaps and breakouts in the sky. That's perfectly fine. You don't always have to use the smaller size, especially if you're someone who's really good with your pressure sensitivity. You shouldn't need to be able to do that. You can just, you know, press really, really firm, really light, should I say, with your brush. But if you are someone who presses quite firm, you may need to bring that brush size down and keep it down. We'll bring that in, bring that across the sky. Lovely. Let's try and push this red all the way into the distance. And look how we're getting that angle, the curvature of all of these beautiful lines up here. Bringing that in. Now, we've got a little bit of blue out here somewhere, so let's try and bring in the blues a bit more. You can as well grab your cursor and maybe you can scale that down just a tiny bit and then move it up. It might mess up some of your angles, but you might get a little bit more of the darkness coming in. So that's just something to bear in mind if you're struggling to bring in some color from out here. I can always smudge down like right at the edge here and then bring that across the sky. You know, you can really push color wherever you need it, wherever you want it. I'm going to bring in some dark tone there, wiggling it down. So this part of the design takes a little bit of time, but the more you kind of go backwards and forwards and overlap and wiggle and, you know, introduce color through all the different layers of it, it's actually going to look even better. So, you know, I urge you to spend the time where you can and, you know, maybe the odd sort of just, you know, just smudge out those clouds almost a little bit. Create some lines running across your sky, more detail. Look at that. So cool. And go all the way over here to the left hand side. You know, the sun's over on the left, so let's try and just introduce a small cloud or two here. Nothing too large. We don't want to distract from the rest, but we're getting that beautiful layering effect. And where I can see, for example, I've got lots of clouds and they're looking fairly similar, I'm going to push up and out and create larger ones now. So I'm going to push up with some red here, up and into there. Let's push up from here as well. Let's make this one a little bit more interesting to look at. Likewise in there too. And now we're getting some bubbly shapes in there, and that's where I need to start utilizing the pressure of the brush. So I hope you're enjoying this. It's so fun. Such again, an interesting idea just to have some fun, create something that doesn't abide by too many rules, but you just enjoy it for what it is. Let's bring that brush size down to the 12 and see if I can create some cool streaks running through here, just some smudge lines. And then right at the very top, can I introduce like a purple cloud? It's like a little bit interesting. Obviously our tree is going to block up quite a bit here, so if you can, you know, press really firm, introduce some big clouds. I'm going to try and smudge all those colors together. Something nice and large. There we go. And then another one in there too. Let's smudge this large cloud here. Bring in some darks. I'm pushing in the dark tone into the cloud and then just smudging them together. Trying to see what shapes I create. You know, can I create like the shaded side almost of the cloud? Wicked. Let's push that purple. Let's flatten that out. A couple of streaks through it just to break up a few of them. So some of them can be nice and sort of rounded, and then you want to go just push it through and just create a streak across the sky. Look how fun that is. You could spend absolutely ages on this. So I do urge you, if you have the time, please do so. At some point I will have to call it quits for this tutorial for me, but maybe I'll come back to it later. Keep smudging it. We do have the option to come back to it. It's not a layer that we need to compress in any way. So from there, let's go ahead and do exactly that. Let's leave that like that. That looks as beautiful as I can make it for now. let's see what else we can do. Well, another thing we can do is we can go ahead and create a new layer. We can go ahead and set this blend mode from normal to add, and we can bring this down to 10 or 11%. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to make sure we are using this color here in the bottom left of the palette. Same brush, so we want to go back into our brush and change it to calligraphy. We're going to go to the blotchy brush. We'll set the size to around about sort of 26%. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look for some of our clouds here, and we're going to wiggle our pen on the underside of them, varying pressures and different sort of designs. So little wiggles, little curls, and you're basically underlighting some of the clouds. Look how cool that looks. It's really subtle. And then because it's set to add, it doesn't matter where you color in. Even on a brightly lit cloud here, I can just add in some wiggles in here, and I can now detail my sky even more. We'll wiggle this around over here, a couple of light ones under there. Now it's really important to also remember you don't have to do everywhere. Pick clouds that you think are really well defined, and therefore because they are well defined you can pull them out and you can easily introduce some wiggles and squiggles. Even just like a line or two across the sky will look great following your guide like that. Find some clouds. Let's go up here. So let's make the brush size a bit bigger this time, maybe up to about 30%. Underside of some of those beautiful big colorful clouds. Wiggle in your pen, and they don't have to be anything sort of specific, just wiggles and fluffy shapes. That's all they need to be. If you want to, you could really define a cloud. If you see like a shape that you really like this one, or it can wrap the lighting up and over onto the top of it, really pull out its shape and create something interesting. And sometimes you don't even need a shape, you can just pluck something out of just thin air. Let's maybe round off a little bit of that, a little bit on the underside up here. Lovely, look how much more striking that looks. And you can just add in detail after detail after detail. Maybe one right at the very top up there. Let's try and get into some of these ones here. Now the ones in the distance are further away, so these ones essentially just need to be like very, very, very thin, streaky lines. That's all they need to be, because the clouds are compressed, remember. So as you make your way across here, you can just add in all of these little dashes and dots almost. That's all they want to be. And then as you start to get over towards the top, you can create these more rounded shapes. So over here, streaking through your sky, underside of some things, and again, light sources over here, so you can wrap it round on the left-hand side of some of those cloud-like shapes. So I can wrap the lighting round the left-hand side. I know clouds can be a little bit tricky from time to time, but with something like this, just have fun with it. Let's go ahead and then just add in the occasional little sort of streak through here. Making sure to try and abide by our drawing guide as much as possible, just so that the angles are definitely correct. Lovely. You can even turn off that guide as well if you just want to triple check how your sky's looking. I could probably undo a few of those lines. I'll leave a few in there though. Let's go ahead and bring back in our tree and everything for it. And then we'll go ahead and we'll create a new layer. We'll drag it underneath those cloud marks. We're going to go ahead and make sure our color is still the one that we were using before. We're going to go to the option of calligraphy. We're going to go to the monoline brush, but we're going to temporarily tap on the monoline. We're going to go to stroke path and we're going to increase the spacing all the way up to max and then hit done. So what that's going to do is the shape that a monoline is a dot, but because it's compressed really thin in terms of how many times it repeats, it looks like a solid line. So we've spaced out all the dots, and if you set your size to like a 1%, you now will be able to tap and you won't be able to accidentally create like a streak. All you'd end up doing is creating a line of dots. So now you should be able to really freely just tap, 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 really free, because you know you're not going to create any drags. You're just going to tap away in your sky. Now you can add some over in the red section. I don't think that's a crime necessarily. Even adding some in between our tree as well. Can add some down here. Now what we're going to do is, this is obviously all set to the same brush size at the minute, which you can vary if you want to. You can set it up to like a 2 or 3%, just see how large it gets. It could probably go bigger than that. Let's go up to an 8%. It can go bigger than that. Let's go up to 15. Add in some larger dots. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and duplicate this layer in a minute and make it really, really small. And that will give us lots of fine stars. So this is like your blueprint almost, just laying out the largest stars. Maybe a couple over there. Lovely. Then let's go to our layer. Swipe it to the left. duplicate it. We'll go ahead and grab our cursor, just use uniform and scale it down, rotate it a little bit just so it definitely varies, and then you can just position this somewhere you like it and then duplicate that. So it's nice and sort of printed almost. You can then rotate that and you get all these really beautiful fine stars, and you can do that up to 3 times really, will look really good. Then I urge you to then pinch those 3 layers together. So you've still got your original large stars and you've got your small stars. Then swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor, scale that down in size again, and you can then move this wherever you want to. Maybe right up in the top right area, because that's where most of our sky is sort of falling off and we can reveal the stars in behind. Now, what we then want to do is pinch all your stars together. We want to go ahead and change the blend mode to the option of add and bring the opacity down to around about sort of 50 to 45%. What that will do is that will allow your stars now, if you zoom right in, they're purple in the purple areas, they're pink in the pink areas, and vice versa. They'll be red and so on for the whole design. And it just makes your stars look a little bit more colourful and match up to the rest of the design. Let's add in some planets. Let's go ahead and create a new layer. Let's go to our colour. We'll keep the same colour as we were working with before, but let's go to our brush. Now your monoline brush, just swipe it to the left and reset it. That way now it will go back to normal as you'd expect it to work. So using the monoline brush, we can draw in a circle up here. Doesn't matter what the brush size is, just pop your finger on the screen to make sure it's a nice perfect circle. Something like that is our largest size. We'll drag and drop our colour in. We're going to zoom in. We're going to go ahead and grab our eraser. We'll tap on our eraser and use the soft brush under airbrushing. With that brush size set to around about sort of 7%, I'm going to go lightly over here in the shadowed side and just take away a little bit of colour, like so. So you're kind of taking away that shadowed side of the planet. Then we're going to go ahead and go to our layer. We're going to go ahead and change its blend mode to the option of overlay. You shouldn't need to change the percentage, but what that will do is it will blend it into your sky a little bit like so. And I'm doing that on purpose because we're not taking this too seriously. We're just adding in some planets just to fill out our sky. Now you can swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Swipe from left to right on both of those and group them together. You can rename the group as well to keep things nice and organized and call it planets. And then the bottom, well, either one of them actually, grab either one of them, grab your cursor, scale it down in size, rotate it to the point where the lightest side is pointing into the corner down here, and just have fun now duplicating your planets and just filling out your sky with just fun, interesting design choices. Now you can also see occasionally some of them get a little bit faint, so you may want to go ahead and duplicate them if you want to make them stand out a little bit more. I'm going to add one right in the distance back here, make it nice and small, just to add in some interesting mini details in your sky. We're creating a really pretty, magical design. Let's bring that one up here. You can have small ones over on the right hand side too, maybe one close to our tree. Sorry, let's go back to our layer. You see I'm doing it fairly fast because there's not really a sort of logic to it. You're just duplicating it and scattering it where you want them. I quite like them all over here on this right hand side. Don't want to go over to the left too much. And you can individually turn them up or down if you wish. So now we've done our details for the sky, I want to add some details to the actual tree. Now, one thing I want to do is go ahead and when you're done with your tree and you're definitely happy with sort of the layout of it, etc., we want to pinch these 3 layers at the top together onto one layer. We then want to go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to tap on it and clipping mask it to the tree. We're going to go to our colors and grab this light purple in the middle of that first column. We're going to go to our brush. Let's go to organic and we're going to go to the twig brush. I've got the size set to 12%. And if we zoom in, I want you to go down this side here of your tree, creating some interesting lines for like the curves of the bark and whatnot, and let that just run out all the way to the bottom. Then take a look at what you've left. Can you then run in either lines off of those lines or just leave a gap and just see if you can create some interesting, like almost details in the roots. Go along the top edge of these as well. You know, interesting avenues and curls and twists and contours to the tree like so. And then in the gaps, if you can just add in like a little line or two, just something thin maybe like so. It's just a bump or lump of some sort that just gets exposed but to a little bit of lighting. So maybe I'll sort of twist this up into here now and leave this big gap here. And then I'll bring in another line up to the tree And then we'll just go ahead and add in a tiny bit down here and a tiny, tiny, tiny bit on this branch here, like that. In fact, we'll redo that again, so it's an even thinner line. There we go. So it's just this left side now getting some interesting sort of detail to it. What we'll then do is we'll go ahead and tap on this layer. We'll alpha lock it. So now we can't paint outside of the lines we've already created. We're going to go to our colors and grab the base color. So this one here, top left. Go to your brush and go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Let's make that brush size around about sort of 5%, in fact, slightly bigger. Let's go up to about 9. And then over here, darken up this side. So I want you to kind of blend out your lines naturally into like a gradient almost, so they fade out. Then go to your colors and grab the color in the bottom left of the palette. And then over here on the left-hand side, just brighten them up a tiny bit. So now you should have like a bit of a fade effect between your lines. They're nice and bright over here and then fade out on the right-hand side. Now up here, I just need to do a bit of manual tweaking here. So I'm going to go to this color here, top left of the palette, and just blend out the edge here, just to fade that out. So I decide where it starts and ends. There we go. Lovely. Let's add a rope swing. Let's go to our layers. Let's create a new layer. Let's go to our brush. We'll go to the option of calligraphy and the monoline brush. I think we can set that fairly small down to a 1%. And let's add in a lovely little rope swing here. So I've got areas here that I think we can add in some sort of rope to. So I think we could go ahead and just draw in a line that just runs down here. Pop your finger on the screen to make sure it's a nice straight line. And maybe the kids sort of jump on from there. You don't have to necessarily have it on 2 low points. You can have it wherever you want. It really doesn't matter. So as long as you get a good gap in between. So I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to make this one a tiny bit lower than the other one to almost point it over to the left-hand side. And then at that point, you want to just create a line that's a little bit higher. See where I've positioned the line? It's a little bit higher on that right-hand side. And then we'll do another line that's parallel to it, but it gets, again, a little bit wider as it gets closer towards us. And then you can just link up this here and then link that up together. Link them up if you need to, but zoom out. And now you should have a rope swing that's just pointing out over to that left-hand side, like so they can look at the sunset. Another detail we can add to our tree is we can go ahead and we can go to it, we can swipe it to the left and we can duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it, go to the option of, go to alpha lock, go to your colors and grab the color in the bottom left of the palette. Go back to the layer, tap on it and fill it. Then go ahead and tap on its blend mode and change it from normal to add. Bring it down to 25%. There we go. And let's grab our cursor. And we're going to tap up here in the top left, or a little bit off to the left. We're going to keep tapping until we end up with this like really cool bright outline effect to everything. It's just going to help your tree stand off of the rest of the design a little bit more. And you can tap on your cursor when you're done. And that's just giving a light edge to everything on this left-hand side. And from an artistic point of view, it brings it out of the screen a little bit more. The only thing I want you to do is then go ahead and grab your eraser. Make sure your eraser is set to the soft brush under airbrushing. And just kind of fade this out over here in the bottom right. So it kind of fades away nicely. Just tidy up any edges. Down here, we'll do the same as well. Just sort of tidy that up. Just making sure it's all focused in that center point. And that should give you a nice solid outline. You can mess around with the opacity of that if you wish, if you want to sort of bring it up or down, that's totally up to you. And when you're done, you can pinch with 2 fingers, you can go full screen with 4, and you end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this, well, beautiful sunset design with a fantastic curly tree. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or anywhere else that you want to come and share your work. And if you want even more tutorials from me, not only do I post weekly tutorials here on my YouTube channel, but I also post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters, and the catalogue's well over 100 at this. And you can check out every single design on my website before you join, and it's as little as £3 a month, or around about $4.50. So if you want to get your name featured in videos, sneak peeks, early access, and like I said, access to that exclusive catalogue of tutorials, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description down below. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.